guest, a UCLA student, Milagro Jones. I'm not sure if you've seen the video or not yet, or videos, but he was walking through the encampment on campus, and a few things transpired. So I asked him to come on the show. I'm very delighted he decided to join me. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me on. I'm glad I get to, share my perspective and my experiences.
Excellent, Milagro. So just share with the audience exactly what happened that day. This was what, 3 days ago? 4 days ago?
So it started on Friday. So that was, I think, April 26th, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And that was day two of the UCLA protest. So basically, from my understanding, is that USC, a private university in California, had a protest, and because it's private property, they were cleared out pretty quickly. Somebody posted on a social media post telling them to regroup at UCLA. They started showing up in droves. I don't know who's financing them, but they are industrial tents started popping up. Donations started flooding in. Barricades started going up. The administration refused to act swiftly to avoid this. This is around graduation time, where Powell Library and Royce Hall and the fountain there are where a lot of students take their grad photos. This is public space where a lot of students walk through. Jewish students started being told that they weren't allowed to walk through unless they denounced Zionism. A lot of anti-Semitic slurs were used. A lot of anti-Semitic graffiti started popping up. So I just went through peacefully on a Friday after class. I was told that I could not practice my First Amendment rights. I was told I could not record in that space. I was told I could not take photos in that space. They tried to restrict my freedom of movement. After surrounding me, they started pushing and shoving me. I sat down because I noticed a lot of people who come in, they get pushed out of the space. They'll link arms and they'll go 1, 2, 3, push, 1, 2, 3, push, and they'll push them out of the space. So I sat down so they couldn't push me out of the space, and I just made some calls. My brothers started coming through. They got afraid when my brother was almost there because I'm 5'7", I'm a little guy, but my brother's a little bit bigger, and they got scared. They let me out of the enclosure they had me in, and I spoke to some people that I didn't know who they were. They ended up being Fox News, CNN, KTLA. So by the time these protesters were trying to defame me, make rumors about me, call me all these different names, I already had some media buzz going, and then I just took my phone and started using social media, which I didn't have any following at the time, but a lot of people have tuned in since then. And now I'm showing the world what these people are really about, the hypocrisy at these big universities, how the faculty supports anti-Semitism. The administration refused to act to nip this in the bud. Students have been assaulted, and our rights have been infringed upon. And I really do hope that people who have the ability will support the House committee that's trying to hold these universities responsible for this anti-Semitism. I hope that they'll tune in, and I hope that they'll show support for the Jewish community. Chancellor Gene Block is set to testify this month, who's the chancellor of UCLA, and I really just hope people will support the Jewish community against anti-Semitism.
Yeah, well, a lot to digest there, and I can only imagine what was going through your mind during those moments. I'm sure it was pretty tense. Obviously, you're being surrounded by people that you don't know what they're capable of, but sometimes when people they're protesting certain things, and they're trying to get their voice out for a certain view, usually they want to, they understand where you're coming from too, because you want to express yourself, right? They might not want to listen, have a conversation. Unfortunately, you know the left, or some woke mobs, they don't want to hear it, whether or not it was Antifa or BLM in the background years ago. If it's still some of the factions of them, you mentioned, maybe paid agitators, which has been some proof of that in New York as well. So maybe you've heard the name George Soros before, so like it benefits people that there are protests going on campuses right now. Unfortunately, ever since Israel was established, and they've been clashing with Palestine for how long now, right? So ever since they were there. So this, in essence, is almost like the perfect situation for the powers that be to have these protests on campus, because if you think about it, the Palestinians and the Israelis, they're gonna fight fucking forever, right? So if they're gonna fight forever, then we can have protests forever, right? So it's pretty wild. Um, some of your videos, I mean, you definitely hit it on the head where you're saying, go listen to your mommy about the mask. I'm watching these videos. I'm like, dude, are they still wearing masks with COVID? At first, I was thinking this, and then all of a sudden, I was like, no, they're trying to hide their identity. So, like, that must have been weird. I mean, are masks mandatory on campus, or are people just trying to hide their identity?
So I didn't see masks anytime recently until this happened. So but basically what the way I look at it is like this. I came to UCLA historically throughout my life. I've always lived in like high crime areas with a lot of gang violence. And usually in those areas a gang will take over. They try to win over the community support with like some surface level stuff, but they're really doing criminal activity, and you can tell that what they're doing is wrong because they start to restrict your freedom of movement to walk through places. They start to threaten you and assault people. You start to see graffiti appear. You start to see very nice places deteriorate. It's like the I think they call it the broken window theory. You start to see trash everywhere, and things start to escalate. So when I saw these people showing up on the campus, it mortified me because this was my safe space. This is the first place I've been to where I'm not seeing fist fights. I'm not hearing gunshots. I'm not hearing the ghetto bird helicopter above me. It was finally a safe place where I could focus on my work and do something positive. And a lot of these people were outsiders. They were not students. A lot of these people were not faculty, but they got faculty and students to join in with committing crimes. And so I came there to stand up against that. If I have the courage to stand up in the hood against gangs and gang violence, knowing the background that I come from, why would I not have the courage to stand up against these organizations and individuals? So for me, it was a no-brainer. I'm gonna use the tactics of a Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., which is nonviolence. I'm not gonna engage these people with violence, even though they touch me, they push me. Last night and into this morning, one of them put his hand into his pocket and claimed he had a gun and he was gonna shoot me and my brother. One of them punched my brother. And while they're doing this stuff, everyone around them is chanting peaceful protest, peaceful protest, peaceful protest. So on the one hand, they're making themselves out to be victims. They're making themselves out a narrative of like the police, the state is repressing them, and they're just poor innocent students who've been hurt by the police. But then on the other hand, they're assaulting people, and there's been plenty of evidence, a lot of it that I've captured and that I've shared with UCPD. So to me, I feel like here at UCLA, we need to have law and order. President Joe Biden, whether I agree with him or his stance, he made a statement today saying that violent protests are not allowed. So if our president, the person that's supposed to be the leadership of the nation, is telling the world that violent protests are not allowed, and we have violent protests at all the major universities breaking out, it's something going on under, like you said, all these names that you named and these different things. Is something going on, and it's someone trying to foment something. And me as an individual, I only have so much power. But with this technology, with just something as simple as this, I was able to reach more than 1 million people, and I was able to show people what's actually going on versus the narrative that is shown to the world. There's a lot of professors that I respect that were sitting there as faculty supporting the protests, yelling divest, divest. And I just simply went in front of them and yelled invest, invest. Because at the end of the day, you as the professor, you as the faculty member, you as the administrator, if you're going to support anything, you should support something that's equitable for all the students. You shouldn't support something that supports one side over the other side, especially when these sides are based on national lines or ethnic lines or racial lines. You definitely shouldn't do that, because then you're in danger of infringing upon people's civil rights. At this time, from what I'm seeing, from what I'm understanding, anti-Semitism seems to be a trend at this university. I've never been one to follow the trend, to go along with what everyone else is doing. So I'm standing up for what I believe is right. And I've received death threats. I've had people tell me that they're going to see me out here where I live, see me at the campus, and I'm not backing down. I'm not afraid of anyone. I'm just going to continue to do what I do and stand up for what I know is right.
Amen, brother. Amen. Yeah, see that fear, right? So they use the fear tactic, and they've always used the fear tactic to quiet the opposition. And I commend you for standing up, standing strong. Obviously, with your background, like you explained, you've faced fear in the face. You stared it down, right? And that's made you, you know stronger? That made you mentally tough to understand this? Obviously, I can tell. You're well educated. What are you studying there at UCLA?
So I'm an English major right now, and I did a concentration in creative writing. So my goal is ultimately to write a book. I'm about to do my MFA in creative writing at LSU in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And my goal is to write a book so I can get my message across to the world without shoving it down their throat, without it being too like over the top. That's why I didn't go the academic route. I'm really just trying to do something creative, something fun, something entertainment, but still get my point across.
Excellent, excellent. So, what's going on? Are classes? I mean, I know you were saying you're going to classes. They're online, or they're still, they're going nonstop, or with this encampment, what portion? I've never been to UCLA. I've never been to that campus before. What I know the camp it's been obviously today. They said they broke it down, right? They arrested a few, maybe 100 people or so. Supposedly they're reporting. What portion of the
Yep.
campus was this encampment?
Yeah, so the encampment was in Dixon Plaza, which is the area between Royce Hall and Powell Library. So they erected barricades basically from when you reach the top of the Jan steps, and then all the way around to the Powell Library side, the Royce Hall side, and then pushing out into where people walk through where Kaplan Hall is. So for me, my class on Friday was actually in Powell Library, and I could not access my class. So our class was moved to Murphy Hall, and then from Murphy Hall, I walked back, and I just decided to go into the encampment because I had a classmate that was going in there. There was another student that I was cool with going in there, and I came into this university really thinking that a lot of this stuff that they teach was true or that it was right and it was correct. And it wasn't until I actually had to experience it and really like grasp it that I realized how insane a lot of it is. So like for example, when I came into that encampment, all I heard and all I knew was the Free Palestine movement. I was wearing a shirt. I was saying the slogan is what everyone else was saying. But when I went into that encampment and I actually dealt with the Free Palestine solidarity soldiers, that's when I realized something was wrong. Why would you restrict my movement? Why would you assault me? And then, as an apology to me, when my brother showed up, their explanation was that they mistook me for being Israeli, as if that was acceptable. So they're telling me that it was a hate crime.
Hmm.
So for me, at that point, I'm zero tolerance for anti-Semitism. I'm zero tolerance for any type of discrimination. I don't care what group it's for. So once I realized that that's what was going on, that's what made me kind of change my stance and start to use my social media. Initially, I mean, maybe 200 people saw what I was saying. I don't know what happened. I don't know who saw it and shared it or what went on, but all of a sudden it started getting out there. People started talking. And then I realized from hearing a lot of feedback, people agree with me. I wasn't going crazy. Like it
No, you're
actually
not going
was
crazy, buddy.
what I was witnessing. The university would try to convince me I'm the one who's going
Yeah, of
crazy. So
course.
when the world seen it, they was telling me like, no, they're tripping, and that's when it just dawned on me like, yeah, they are tripping, and they've been trying to convince me for 2 years that what they're doing is normal and what they're doing is okay.
So when kind of make paint a picture for the audience. So like when you're entering an encampment, you're passing someone who's holding, they're in the front lines, for example. They're saying, "Who are you? Where are you going?" Or like you were just walking through, and then all of a sudden someone noticed you. That you didn't maybe you didn't have your mask on, and like maybe this guy, we don't know this guy. How does that transpire?
Yeah, so what they attempted to do was what they are was attempting to do up until last night was they designated leadership roles to people. So there were people with different vests on. There was people who were doing self defense classes. There were different people instructing different things. And so when you try to enter the camp, they would have at their different entrances people who would tell you if you're allowed to get in and if you're allowed to not get in. And they would base it on they vouch for you. So if I'm in the in crowd and I'm cool and I say you're cool, then you can get in, which means some people just can't get in because they're social pariahs. They're not cool enough to get in. I've seen that happen to multiple people. And I was like, that's not, I didn't like that. So I was against that. Another thing that was going on, I seen them tell Jewish students that they couldn't come in just for being Jewish. Well, with me, they said they mistook me for Jewish. I don't know, how do you look at someone and say, this person's Jewish, this person's not Jewish, by looking at someone. But that's what they were doing. And that's where it's a civil rights violation. So when I entered the first time, they told me I could not enter. They had a checkpoint set up. They had a guy with a vest on who tried to stop me from going in, and they said, you cannot enter. What do you mean I can't enter? I go to this university. This it had a 9% acceptance rate. My counselors at LA Trade Tech told me, don't even try to apply for UCLA. You'll be lucky to get into a Cal State. I had to have my own tunnel vision to get into this university. It had to be my dream. I'm not gonna let this clown tell me I can't go into Dixon Plaza. So I walked in anyways. When I walked in, people started following me around. Faculty members. I asked them, aren't you a faculty member? Yeah, I'm FJP, Faculty for Justice in Palestine. Why are you following me? I was like, do you like my cologne? Do I smell good? You trying to get a whiff of me? Why are you following me? They just breathing down my neck. Now it's funny because if I wanted to walk into a store, right, and the owner followed me around the store or security followed me around the store, that faculty member would say they're discriminated against me, and they would point the finger at that person. But then when I walk into their space that they don't own, that they don't actually have any control over, they can follow me around and do the exact same thing to me. So that's where my whole kind of understanding was kind of shifting at, is the hypocrisy. These people love to point the finger at everyone else, call people racist, call people sexist, call people every name in the book. They label people every name in the book and try to cancel them, take their books off the shelf, take their songs off Spotify, say you can't watch their movies, you can't listen to their podcasts, you can't even agree with them because they're different from their opinion. But they do the exact same thing as these people. They're against censorship, but they're the biggest censors in the world today. They're against
Yeah, that's when
fascism, but
you
they're the biggest fascists in the world today.
exactly.
It just
That's
it just
that's
it
when you
just
really
doesn't it doesn't
figure
it
it
doesn't
out
make
is
any
when
sense
they're
to me.
full of crap. Is because all of a sudden their hypocrisy is just so blatant that you obviously know that something's not right here. Like, for example, take it back to COVID. 4 years ago, where the protests were starting to emerge over the summers, but no one was wearing masks, and like people would ask, like, "Well, why aren't they wearing
Right.
masks? You got mask mandates everywhere." Well, these protests are okay. They don't have to wear masks. And you're like, all right. I already knew before that it was bullshit, anyways. But like, okay, now if you can't see it for what it is now, come on, right? So the hypocrisy becomes so
Right.
blatant that you're either waking up, or you're just in complete denial, or you're delusional. You're basically with them, whether or not you're condoning what they're doing or not. But you're going along with it, which is kind of almost worse because or stand up,
Yeah.
grow a spine, So I truly appreciate what you did there because I know it does take some courage to walk through because in the end you don't know what's going to happen because you're also outnumbered. And when you're dealing with the
Right.
woke left, I mean, you find one person one on one, they're going to back down. When they're in a crowd, they act like
Mm.
a pack of wolves,
Right.
and for better
Exactly.
or worse, sometimes they get smacked up, sometimes they don't. But you gotta keep your head on a swivel, and also using the phone helped you a lot because they're afraid of that. They already had the mask on, they're trying to hide their identity.
Right.
But man, Christ, I mean, your adrenaline must have been pumping though, no?
Yeah, so to me, it was very similar to what played out with the Black Lives Matter movement. So I've already been through something similar. When I was living in South LA on 48th Place and Compton Avenue, there was a professor named Melina Abdullah who's part of Black Lives Matter LA. And for just an example, she had created a GoFundMe and for a young man that was murdered by the police. Now the mother of that young man wanted to get some of the GoFundMe money that was created in her son's name for the funeral, the wake, things of that nature. And when she went to the Black Lives Matter LA meeting, rally, whatever you want to call it, Melina Abdullah and her leadership team had male security put hands on this black woman. So once I realized that these were the privileged elite of the African American community who were getting money off of the suffering of impoverished blacks in the hood and then taking that money for themselves and not doing anything to help those in poverty, I realized that that movement had that level of hypocrisy. And I called Melina Abdullah out about it. And her response was to say that God put her in that position, and you can't argue with someone who says that a higher being, a higher authority is allowing them to do what they're doing. So I just walked away from the movement. I left it alone. I walked away from it. I didn't have a social media following, so when I shared things that were going on back then, nobody really heard what I had to say. And it was, this situation was, to me, I thought it was going to play out exactly the same. They're going to trample on people's rights. They're going to do the same to me. It's played out in the past. But for some reason, I don't know how, I don't know why, people listened. People heard what I had to say. People were supportive, and it got exposed to the world. That's the only difference. And I feel like this, what's going on right now, is just a trend. 2 years from now, those same people who had the BLM, that have the Palestine flag, that had the Ukraine flag, they're gonna have the next thing 2 years from now, and the next thing a year from now. They don't really care about this stuff. It's very performative politics for them. They're not grounded in these movements. They don't care about any of this stuff. It's just fun and games to them. But it's not fun and games to me, because I'm trying to get to class and you're restricting my movement. Because I have a daughter who I bring to campus to go to the things she does. She has youth recreation facilities at the campus, and you don't even have respect for me when I'm with my daughter. That's crazy. Even the gangs, even the BLM, even all these other people, they would give me a pass if I'm with my daughter. You know what I'm saying? They would say, "Oh, he's with his daughter. All right, maybe we'll get to you when we see you one on one." No, these people even try to stop me and do things when I'm with my daughter. So it's just a different level of lunacy with them, and it's like they're creating laws, they're creating institutions, they're creating things where they're trying to make everyone else agree with them and go along with what they're saying, and they move like sheep. They when they get into these call, like, it's like a trance. They be repeating the same thing. They be having a soulless look in their eyes, and I'm like, someone else got to be seeing this right now. Someone else. So I just showed it to the world, and now people can see what I see. So just imagine if people are reacting this strongly to 5-minute clips of the past couple of days. I've been going through this since fall of 2022. Today, just today, I got the Title IX investigation report back from what I filed in fall 2022, finding the professor guilty in a preliminary investigation of his anti-Semitic remarks that he made in the class. He was found guilty on two of the accusations and allegations against him, and not guilty of two. So one of the ones he was found guilty of is his anti-Semitic remarks. It took them 2 years, and they only went and quickly got the finding because I'm telling them, with everything that's going on, I'm going to bring that up. Why have you been keeping that a secret for 2 years? So at the same time, they get the answer the same day after I just emailed them about it. I mean, to me, it's been a nightmare to be at this school, but it was my dream to get into this opportunity. So I've been trying to see it with rose-colored glasses on and just make the best of it. Do what I can do while I'm there. Put out the true brewing values that they tell us to embody. I've been trying to be the change I want to see. I've been trying to have the aura and the vibe and the aesthetic I want to see, and just try to ignore what's going on around me. But once they made it to the point where I can't even mind my own business, I can't even just walk where I want to walk and do what I want to do, they hit the fan.
Yeah, yeah, especially man, all you're trying to do, like you said, is live your dream, and everyone's entitled to that. Everyone's entitled to live out their dream, and when that's impeded upon, especially in a public place, this is where you're going. I mean, whether you're going to work or you're going to school, this is what you need to do. This is like your livelihood. This is what you're all about, and you can't allow that to be infringed upon. Rightfully, you got to stand up, and I'm glad you did, because I know there's a lot of people that are probably feel this. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel the same way, but a lot of people are afraid to act on on those feelings because they're alone. They don't want to be. They don't want to mess with the mob. The mob rule takes over, and yeah, I. I understand why they are afraid, but you have to stand up because they're just going to keep taking more and more and more. And right now, it seems like this playbook, it seems like they're just ramping it up. Right now we're in the spring. We have an election year come in. They got all the rest of the year. They got all the summer before the election comes, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. This year is going to be, who knows what's up their sleeves, because the powers that be, they'll pull out all the cards. The October surprise is happens every election year. Obviously the last time was COVID. We had the BLM, Antifa. I mean, obviously now we have this, and what is next? I mean, how long can they go and protest on all these campuses without some pushback? Because eventually people will be like, listen, enough is enough, and the school year is done. All of a sudden, school year is done, right? So the school probably ends what, in May or June down in UCLA.
Yes, we're on a quarter system, so ours ends in June. I think those on the semester system, theirs probably ends in May.
So, and then what's going to happen over the summer? There's going to be something else. Is whether or not and also I think it's coming up on the 4-year anniversary of the George Floyd, um, you know, killing too. So that they're gonna ramp it up. They're gonna ramp it up, and it all comes really down to, order out of chaos. You've heard the terms divide and conquer. Pitting against each other, because that's all they want. Because the more people fight amongst each other, the powers that be, the puppet masters up top, they're going to do whatever the hell they want. And until then,
Right.
we're not going to be able to get our pitchforks and go after them. They're on their own. They're on their yachts. They're on their fucking private jets. They're the banksters. They're doing whatever the hell they want. While people that care about their future and their freedom and their family, it's getting infringed upon by people like you said, people that are in a trance that follow along. The sheep out there, they'll lead us all to slaughter. Right? That's what's going to happen
Hmm.
eventually, unless you're going to stand up. And I'm so happy you did, because there needs to be more people out there like you on campuses pushing back is what is actually needed right
Right.
now. Because if we keep going back and give them a little more, they're gonna take a mile. And we've seen it, and you've seen it firsthand. And I'm interested to know, are these faculty members that are joining these protests, are they going to face any form of discipline in the end? I mean, obviously you're exposing them for being assaulted and harassed, and your First Amendment rights being infringed upon at the university. Like, are these faculty members worried, or is the dean worried there?
So my understanding, well, my experience is that this university likes to cover things up and hide things, not to actually hold people accountable. At least for the faculty, for the students, I think it's a little bit different. But what I did witness last night and into this morning, while I was at the at the school, seeing everything just completely devolving, is that they were using these tactics where they were sending the protesters through different exits around the different sides. And one thing I noticed is when they realized the raid was happening at certain points, because the LAPD raided on one side and then they withdrew, and then the CHP raided a different side. Once they saw those CHP coming in, a lot of these faculty members and different people, they started trickling out of the scaffolding exit by the scaffolding on Powell Library, and they just left. So I feel like it's really cowardly how people in positions of leadership at this protest left other people to get arrested and be their martyr, and they were able to just trickle out and leave. And the police weren't saying that they were telling them to leave. They were giving, I think, 10 different warnings. They kept blasting warnings for them to leave. Even when they raided in the first time, they didn't arrest anybody. They moved back out, blasted more warnings. From 1 a.m. until 5 o'clock in the morning, they just continuously gave them warnings and warnings and warnings and warnings before they started arresting them. So I don't know how these protesters can try to. I've seen them giving the speeches, and I've seen like some of the articles in the media, and they're trying to make it seem like the police are just coming in and violently repressing them. I've never seen this level of restraint. Like, the LAPD does not have the best reputation, but the level of restraint and professionalism I saw from the police, the level of instigating they were trying to do to even just the security, getting in the security guard's face, sticking their fingers in their face. I've got videos of them calling the police names, insulting them, insulting their families. There was one guy who was wishing death upon their children, and the police were just calm, respectful. They did their job. They did what they had to do. They were complete. In my opinion, they were completely restrained. I know there are a lot of people trying to say, well, they used the beanbag guns, or the non lethal weapons, whatever they're called. Yeah, you guys were throwing trash cans at their head. You were throwing cones at their head. You were shooting fire extinguishers in their face. Over, like, you guys were attacking them, and you're saying ACAB, ACAB, FUCPD, FLEP. You're yelling all these insults and different things. And when they tell you to follow the law and you refuse, and you get a consequence, suddenly you're the victim. It just boggles my mind, because I come from a background where we know if we break the law, what's going to happen. And on top of that, we know we might not even be breaking the law, and it's something still might come down on us. So to see this level of privilege where you can insult and attack the same people that are there to protect you, the same people that are there to help you, it just boggles my mind. And at the flip side, they also sit there and say to defund the police. They sit there and say that they want to there's this thing they want to do where they want to get rid of them, abolish. They want to abolish the police. They want to
Of
get rid of
course.
police. But then when the police didn't respond the way they wanted to, uh, when they had clashes with the counter protesters, that they were the ones who were instigating, all of a sudden the police are wrong for not responding in the way that they wanted. But you didn't want the police. You just said you wanted them defunded and you wanted them abolished, but now you want them to respond. So I can't even work with these people or come to a consensus because I feel like it's irrational. It's not logical, and that's where I try my best to be a peer, to just even just to be neutral. Like I know you're talking about unity and how it does feel like people are trying to divide us. So I try to stay neutral. I try to stay out of it. I try to just mind my own business. But I couldn't grasp it. I couldn't understand it, and I couldn't let them just bully me around and push me around. So I'm
Yeah.
at a loss. Like I would love to just be completely neutral, mind my own business, but I feel like I have to take a stand. There's a I said in fall 2022, I filed my complaint against the school for anti-Semitism. It's now 2024, and we see what's popping off at the school. If they had addressed it back then, we probably wouldn't even have this problem. If they had created strong policies back then, we probably wouldn't even have this problem. So I feel like it's on the chancellor, it's on the dean. Will they hold professors and faculty members accountable? I would say definitely not. I
Yeah, I wouldn't
They
hold your
sweep this
breath.
stuff
I
under the
wouldn't hold your
rug.
breath at all. Now, obviously, you mentioned how the police are showing, maybe compassion and some restraint. They're definitely taking orders, but it comes from, well, from who? I mean, UCLA, that's a big time university, and these other universities across the country, the big time universities that there's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of money involved. So you always kind of have to go back to like, okay, Bono, who benefits, right? So who benefits from all these protests?
Mhm.
Who benefits from allowing them to flourish for a period of time? Then you're gonna, yeah, was not. Then you saw UCLA. They pushed back a little bit. It's on push back in New York a little bit now. So they gave them some. They pushed them back, and they're gonna give it a breather. Maybe it'll be a week or so. Do you see them trying to open up another encampment on campus?
I really hope not. I saw what happened at Echo Park, when Mitchell Farrell was the city council person. I was living in East Hollywood at the time, and a lot of those same people who were at those events, a lot of the same people who were there instigating, a lot of the same people who were there creating the press releases, a lot of the same people who were there coaching the homeless community there. They were here. I've gotten to know a lot of these people. When I was in South LA, when I was in East Hollywood, I got to know a lot of these different people. And when I got accepted into UCLA, I was downtown, and a lot of these people called me a sellout for going to UCLA. They basically pushed me out of what they had going on, and I'm thankful because what they had going on and what they have going on right now, it's not productive, it's not peaceful. In 5 to 10 years from now, they're not going to show me anything they built. When those people took over Echo Park Lake, they left behind trash. People OD'd there. It was a disaster. When these people left out of Dixon Plaza, they left behind graffiti. They left behind trash. When I get out of this meeting, I'm going down there to help clean up
Right
because
on.
they create messes. They create trash. They don't they're about blight. I'm about beautification. I'm here in Los Angeles where I've served in neighborhood councils and I've helped to get grants so that we can beautify communities. I've helped to get grants so that we can create art projects. I just can't see the same perspective as them. I'm about making the world a better place. They're about tearing things down and making it a worse place. But
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
So Milagro Jones telling us, letting us know exactly what's going on at UCLA. Um, what a crazy time to be alive. Obviously, it's not the first time we've had riots or protests in campuses throughout the years. It's pretty amazing to get a firsthand perspective from Milagro here. Um, what would you say is like the vibe on campus? Like where does, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I know you're not speaking to everyone, but does most of the student body agree with what they were trying to accomplish and convey, or were they like, come on guys, all right, we have to live, we got this class, we gotta keep going on, keep moving on? Or was it like, yeah, I like what they're doing, they're standing strong, they're fighting for the Palestinians? What was the vibe?
So for me, I've never seen a student on the campus go against uh, the Free Palestine objectives movement, the Solidarity Camp. Everywhere I've went, people have showed support for the protesters. My neighbors, I live in family housing. My neighbors show support for the protesters. The students on campus show support. The faculty show support. From everyone I've talked to, has showed complete and total blind devotion and support. And the strange thing about that is on social media, I see a lot of critique. I see a lot of students on their UCLA Reddit. I see a lot of students that are speaking out, but they're afraid to say. And I understand why, because a lot of them have messaged me and said, "Hey, I'm an international student. I have a visa. I'm afraid if I was to speak out, something could happen to me. But I want to tell you, I give your support because I felt the same way that you felt." Or students will tell me that they didn't speak up because they were afraid. Or a professor even messaged me and said, I agree with everything you're doing, but I'm afraid to speak out because of my job. So on the surface, I think everyone's trying to go along and get along, and they're all just agreeing with 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 what they hear and what they see, and nobody's challenging it. And I think behind the scenes, maybe in more private, informal settings, like when they feel comfortable, they're able to voice their dissent, or when they're on a social media, they're able to voice their dissent. So I'm just thankful that I was able to help them have a voice of dissent in the space, because without me speaking up, I feel like we would have had this protest end, and there would have been no challenge to the narrative that these were just some good, peaceful, innocent protesters who the university didn't support enough, and the big bad LAPD repressed. And I refuse to let that be the narrative. In reality, these protests were not peaceful. They were unlawful. People were assaulted. Property was damaged. This phone right here, I couldn't even tell you how expensive it is, but I know that bro that broke my phone, I guarantee he couldn't have. If I told him go in his bank account right now and replace it, he couldn't replace it. You know, so the mindset of these people that damaged all this property at UCLA, they can't afford to repair these historical buildings. They can't
Yeah, for
afford
sure.
to clean up this stuff.
How
So
many
we're
how
not we're
many
not we're not
protesters
on the
were
same
there?
level. I'm You said how many
How many
protesters?
protesters, or how many people were in the encampment total? More or less.
It
Give me
was
an
every day I
estimation.
went, it was different. It was fluctuating.
Hmm.
Yeah, so people were going in and out. I would say on any given day, I would see about 50 tents. Um, I would see about 50 tents, and I would just see hundreds of people. I would see 50 tents. On a lightest day, I would say there was dozens of people, but on the heaviest day, I would say there was hundreds of people in
Now,
that
how
space.
long how long were they
So
there?
they were there from Thursday, April 25th, until this morning. They were just pushed out this morning.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow, that's pretty amazing. And you know what though? Yeah, I think you had a lot to do with it too, because anyway, because what happened, what you did, which what was awesome, was expose what was happening. And once they allow one person to do it, there's going to be other people that are going to want to say, you know what, we're going to stand up right now. So they couldn't allow people
Right.
like yourself to continue to go in there and stand up for your God given rights and your First Amendment rights. So they couldn't allow that pushback. So in all actuality, I think you played a major hand in shutting it down. So
Right.
kudos to you, kudos to you for that. And hopefully they think twice the next time they want to starting encampments all over this country, where students like yourself that believe in freedom, that believe in their own dreams, that they want
Yep.
to go out and study or work and support their family in their future, they're going to stand up, because enough is enough. I mean, listen, I'm all for protests. That's the First Amendment, right? Like
Right.
I'm all
Same.
for
Same.
that,
Definitely.
but you
Same.
can't use it and exercise your First Amendment right while at the same time taking away someone else's right to live, to do whatever the hell they want.
Exactly.
So like,
Right.
again, it goes back to the hypocrisy, and that's when people start to realize, like yourself, like this just does not add up. Um,
Right.
so
Right.
like I said, I'm glad you went out there and you did it, Milagro. So moving forward, look into your crystal ball and imagine. Imagine we're in, late summer, early fall. Where do you see this country? Where do you see these types of movements? What do you think is going to happen before the election?
Yeah, so for me, I feel like right now I've got to continue to grow my support base, and I've got to continue to reach out to others and build community, so that what we stood against here at UCLA was something very small, something very personal, and it was at a very local level. But since you're mentioning like national politics, I think that that's something that we need to have on our minds, and we need to start addressing. So I think we can start small with this. We can make sure that these protesters do not get to take that space again or any other space on this campus. If they attempt to do so, I know I will be calling upon all of my supporters who have reached out to me that we can stage peaceful counter protests and that we can prevent that from happening. And going forward, I do hope that I can use my platform and use my voice and use the opportunity I have, the education I have to make a difference in national politics too.
Excellent, Milagro. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I will certainly be in touch. Keep up the good fight. Keep living your dream, and that's what I try to express to all my listeners and anyone who is out there from a young age to no matter how old you are. You need to be passionate about something. You need to live your dream because if you're not living for your own dream, you're living for someone else's dream, and then that's not what we want to be, right? So keep on keeping
Right.
on, my friend. I will certainly be in touch. Thank you so much for joining me today.
All right. Thanks for the opportunity. Have a good one.